Namaste and welcome. This is The Nation at 5. I'm Mahant Narendra and let's start with these visuals coming in from Porbandar port. This is Porbandar in Gujarat, where at Mundra has been perhaps the biggest drug haul, unearthing what could be a dreaded nexus of narco-terrorism because the origin of this contraband is from Afghanistan. And clearly it made its way from Iran and it was then being used. Where all was it going to go? But it was meant for mainland India. Who all are involved, who are all part of this entire nexus is a big question. How is it that, and these are at this point in time visuals coming in from Porbandar, Gujarat, where the investigations continue. There is a third container, 2 containers with 3 tons of talcum powder. That's what it was called, talcum powder, but it's actually heroin, and that too high-grade heroin, worth over 21,000 crore now, ladies and gentlemen, more than $2.7 billion. That's the worth of this heroin that's now been caught. The origin was Kandahar, where the exporter from there was a Haji Hassan Limited, and the importers were an Ashi Trading Company, which was the name of a company, Vijayawada based, but owners were a couple, Vaishali and Sudhakar, based in Chennai. These were the people who have now been arrested, 10-day custody. There have been 3 more arrests from Mumbai. 2 of those people are now supposedly Afghans. That's what we are given to understand. There will be more arrests. This is not going to end here. Were they just fronts? Were they just acting on somebody else's behest? Where do these threads lead to? 21,000 crore of heroin was coming into our country. 3 tons of heroin was coming into our country. It was coming in from Afghanistan, where the Taliban and the ISI are eyeing only earnings from drug trade. That is the reality. Direct threats, heroin possible last resort to fund the ISI Taliban activities. And in the Helmand province, which is so known as the opium basin of the world, there is a 4-time increase in the acreage of opium grown. From 64,000 hectares sometime in 2019 till about May-June 2021, it had gone up to 225,000 hectares, ladies and gentlemen. So clearly they want to make their money by selling opium and heroin, which is a derivative of opium. The couple has been arrested by Chennai, by the DRI. The ED is now also getting involved. There is more news that is also coming through at this point, that the Enforcement Directorate is going to get involved. The couple which has been arrested has been sent to 10 days in custody. Afghan nationals in Delhi and NCR are being questioned. Direct threats being found, like I have said, to Pakistan and also to Afghanistan. Herman now joins us live at this point. We'll get you more details as they are coming through at this point. Herman, 3 arrests in Mumbai. And quite a shocker the developments that have come through. 3 tons of heroin was coming into our country. Yes, there are drug estimates which say that close to about 8 to 10 tons come in every year, and the total amount of drugs circulating in our country is near about 80,000 crore. But 3 tons and such a huge haul, and it's all coming in as talcum powder.
Being termed as the largest haul, not just in India, but rather in the world too. That is what DRI officers are also telling us. As you were rightly pointing out, Anand, at a time, when, the world is sort of disowning the Taliban, which has recently taken over Afghanistan, except based on humanitarian aid, this seems to be their last sort of resort because of their plummeting sort of revenues. But as you are pointing out, this is massive. I was talking to a few DRI as well as even NCP officers to try and get an understanding of the price value at a wholesale market. And what I can tell you, Anand, is that, this is one of the best superior qualities of heroin is what we are told. Secondly, at the wholesale market, it begins 5 crores and upwards per kilogram. So one can really understand, the sort of street retail value what it could hold, even for a few grams to the tune of 1 to even 5 grams. What we are told is clearly 5 crores and upwards per kilogram is what it is in the wholesale market. For how long was this racket going on? You've been mentioning about Afghan nationals under the scanner. But more importantly, what investigation is right now looking at is who were the ones in India who was facilitating the same and for how long. Because almost last year, I can tell you, at a port here in Mumbai too, there was similar, heroin that was also picked up once again from Afghanistan, but that was in a limited quantity. But this is believed to be the largest in the world in terms of the size as well as the wholesale and the street value of the same. Besides that, Anand, you were mentioning about the couple that was picked up initially where, the shipment was marked for. Now, what investigations are pointing out is that there could be a third party involved where the couple may have not known that, this was the sort of shipment coming in. Then who was it for? Because they also believe there were handlers, for this particular shipment in Delhi. Besides that, was this only meant, for circulation in India, or was it supposed to move forward? That is also part of the investigation. Although it is believed that Mumbai is one of the cities where it was meant to be sold at a retail value. We've seen in the past how the NCB, meanwhile, has still continued to investigate, not just, in India, because India is being looked at, and particularly Mumbai as a city, is looked at as an end consumer. But this entire sort of narco trade being facilitated for the purpose and the permitting, sort of revenues for the ISI as well as Taliban is definitely a cause of concern. And that is the sort of forward. So what one can expect in the next few days, several more arrests and, probably try and link the past falls that had taken place. As I was mentioning, in Mumbai too, there was around 300 kilograms of heroin that was picked up. Was this all part of a syndicate that was operating? And more importantly, who in India was facilitating the same? That is something that is part of the investigation.
Well, thank you for your inputs. Herman Alok Bansal, Director, India Foundation, is with us. Alokji, we've spoken about this entire drug basin and how drugs are going to be used. But 3 tons of heroin, 3,000 kilogram heroin, that's only 2 containers so far. There is a third container which is expectedly on transit, and we don't know if it will land at the same port. Alokji, can you hear me?
I have no doubts that these drugs are being sent from Afghanistan to fund terror activities in India, because this is a huge amount of drug and this was headed for Delhi. And in the past also, Taliban, in conjunction with ISI, has been using drugs to generate money for their nefarious activities as well as to fuel terrorism across the borders. And now the Taliban is firmly ensconced in Afghanistan. It would want to propagate its ideology across borders. And I think this would be an opportunity for it to do so. And I think funding for this would come from this enormous amount of drug that is trying to be smuggled into India from Kandahar.
Sir, more news coming through, and let's go across to this. The Enforcement Directorate, like I said earlier, that we are expecting these inputs to come through. The Enforcement Directorate will now probe the heroin smuggling case and will soon take over the case from DRI. The ED will work to investigate the connections of drug smugglers from Afghanistan to many states inside India. Shankar Anand joining us live now with more details. Ji Shankar, इसके तार कहाँ जुड़ रहे हैं अब?
देखिए आनंद, जिस तरह से निश्चित तौर पे इस मामले में जो तार जो है सीधे तौर पे पाकिस्तान, इस मामले में अफगानिस्तान और तालिबान से तार जो है जुड़ते हुए दिख रहे हैं। और अगर अफगानिस्तान की अगर बात करें तो 15 अगस्त को जब तालिबान ने अफगानिस्तान पर पूर्ण तौर पर कब्जा किया, उसके बाद तालिबान का जिस तरह से वहां पे सरकार बनी है, तो इस मामले में जो केंद्रीय जांच एजेंसी DRI जो तफ्तीश कर रही है, तो उस दौरान ये पता चला है कि ये तालिबान की सरकार जब वहां पे सत्ता में आई, उसके बाद ये खेप भारत में भेजी गई है और भारत में आंध्र प्रदेश, गुजरात और उत्तर प्रदेश में इसके कनेक्शन जुड़ते हुए नजर आ रहे हैं। अभी तक इस मामले में 5 आरोपियों को गिरफ्तार किया गया है, लेकिन जो हमारे जांच एजेंसी के जो सूत्र हैं वो बताते हैं कि इस मामले में जल्द ही कुछ और अफगानिस्तान मूल के जो निवासी हैं बाकायदा उसकी गिरफ्तारी हो सकती है। और इस मामले की गंभीरता को देखते हुए जल्द ही केंद्रीय जांच एजेंसी ED इस केस को टेक ओवर करने वाली है। तो जिस तरह से यहाँ पे देखा जाए, अफगानिस्तान और तालिबान का कनेक्शन सामने आया और इस मामले में जिस तरह से केंद्रीय जांच एजेंसी ED की अगर बात करें तो ED इस मामले में मनी लॉन्ड्रिंग एक्ट के तहत इस केस को जल्दी दर्ज करने वाली है। और जिस तरह से DRI ने इस केस को रजिस्टर्ड किया और इस मामले में कई राज्यों में उसकी इन्वेस्टिगेशन अभी भी चल रही है, तो उस केस को आधार बनाते हुए ED इस केस को रजिस्टर्ड करेगी, उसके बाद इस मामले में आगे इन्वेस्टिगेशन करेगी। और जिस तरह से यहाँ पर देखने को मिला है कि तकरीबन 3000 किलोग्राम का हेरोइन जो बरामद किया गया है, जिसकी अनुमानित कीमत जो है वो लगाई जा रही है 21,000 करोड़। तो किस तरह से इसे भारत के अंदर में कई राज्यों में फैलाना था, किस तरह से एक पूरा हेरोइन का जो कनेक्शन जो कहा जा सकता है उस कनेक्शन को फैलाना था, ड्रग्स का जो एक कनेक्शन वो फैलाना था। और इस मामले में जिस तरह से पैसा किसको मिलना था, किसको फायदा होना था, तो यहाँ पर जिस तरह से अफगानिस्तान मुल्क के कई आरोपियों का नाम जिस तरह से सामने आ रहा है, तो इतना
पर ये
साफ
सब
पता
तो
चलता है
प्यादे
कि
लगते
तालिबान को
हैं
इसका फायदा हो
शंकर।
सकता
सबसे
था।
बड़ी बात
और
यह है
इसी
कि
के
ये
लिए
सब तो प्यादे लग रहे हैं, मुखौटे हैं और फ्रंट्स, दीज आर ऑल फुट सोल्जर्स और पॉन्स और जस्ट फ्रंट्स. There is a real force behind which is orchestrating all of this, and these people have to be very influential or powerful to be able to cart, and of course really wealthy to be able to shoulder a shipment which is about 3 tons of heroin, Alok Bansalji. So this is no small fry who's involved in this.
See, there is no doubt the amount of heroin that is involved, the amount of money that is involved, very clearly brings out that it is at a very high level. And this sort of heroin, firstly being smuggled from Kandahar, that is Afghanistan, to Iran, and then going into the ships, shows that there are connivance at a very high level. Anything going out of Afghanistan in today's world cannot move out without the connivance of Taliban, especially from Kandahar, which is actually the hub of Taliban activities. And Taliban is hand in glove. The ISI is involved in fermenting terror within India. So I think it is with the connivance of ISI that this whole game has been played, where this huge consignment of heroin has been masked. As you know, I was going through the report. This was not the entire container did not contain heroin. It was actually in the middle. On top and bottom, there were talcum, raw talcum, which was actually put, and that's how it was sent. And the containers were sent from Bandar Abbas so that no finger is pointed towards Pakistan. Correct. Although bulk of Afghanistan's export and import would have actually gone through Karachi, but it was deliberately sent to Bandar Abbas, which is very far off, and from there it was brought to India, primarily to deflect attention, and also because bulk of India's imports and exports from Afghanistan actually are through Iran. And that's how the ISIs played this game. Now we need to investigate as to who were the intended recipients.
Correct.
What was the money about to be dispersed? Because usage of drug to ferment terror has been an old tactics of ISI. And I think we need to be extremely cautious about it.
True. So they layer on both sides, they layer it with talcum powder so that even if somebody checks, it's a random check. The probability of them understanding that the heroin is actually sandwiched between the talcum powder is between the talc is improbable. They also reroute it through a longer port and it goes through a circuitous route so that any suspicion is shaken off, because India's imports and exports into Afghanistan happen via Bandar Abbas. So the port of origin is also not from Pakistan but from Iran. But the whole shipment was carted all the way from Kandahar to Bandar Abbas in Iran, and then from there brought into the Mundra, and from there where was it intended to pan India? That is the bigger question. Alokji, please stay on with us. We've got more information coming through, and this is sources suggest that there have been no arrests made by the Vijayawada police, and sources are suggesting, and this is investigations editor Manoj Gupta getting us this input, that the couple that has been arrested from Chennai, Vaishali and Sudhakar, may actually not be directly involved. They may have actually given their license to import to some third party against a certain amount of money. And it's this third party who would have used it to smuggle narcotics. Possibly they don't even know who was trading or importing on their license, which is all the more startling that if there is a proxy over a proxy, how layered this entire network is so that they don't get caught. Herman joining us with more details. Yes, Herman.
Well, Anand, as far as this Ashik company is concerned, it's located in Vijayawada is what we know. And just by the documents itself alone, it shows that it has incorporated somewhere around August 18, 2020 last year. And as you are rightly pointing out, it was owned by this couple, but may have given it to a third party. So therefore, since the last 1 year, was it being used as a shell company? That is something that the investigation is looking at. Besides that, while investigating, sources are also suggesting, since the DRI has arrested the couple, which exactly was this third party, because what was intended is that the final shipment, while it was, the shipment address was meant for Vijayawada, the ultimate destination was supposed to be Delhi and other places in Mumbai, because that is the route usually that one takes, Anand, because while it comes from the ports and after that we have these lorries that take it using the road transport and then ship it to various places for their end consumption. So while the company may have been incorporated somewhere around August 18, 2020, that is what the official data suggests. So since the last 1 year, was this the only shipment or may have there been more in the past? Was the couple aware or was it only for monetary gains that they decided to give it? Because do remember, Anand, this is also coming at a time, ever since the company was incorporated, was happening, during the lockdown period. And as I was talking to a few officers from the DRI and NCB, what they say is that the market, that the street value of drugs had really increased a lot, because of the lockdown at various places, not just around the world, but also here in India. And particularly in a place like Mumbai and in Delhi, where there were strict norms, the street value had definitely increased almost, 3 times the original price. The wholesale price, as I was saying, heroin of the best quality is 5 crores and upwards per kilogram. So one can really understand the magnitude in terms of the sums of money if one looks in its totality. So clearly, yes, while the couple may have been arrested, who exactly were they had given out this third license for? And more importantly, who were the Indian connections that were facilitating the entire sort of operations and for how long? That is something that the investigation is looking at.
Well, thank you for your inputs, Herman. Going back to Alok Bansalji. Alokji, one of the aspects was that India earlier used to be used as a hub. So you had areas or uninhabited islands in Lakshadweep. They even used sometimes some islands of Maldives. And on this front, going all the way up to some of the islands in Andaman and Nicobar, where they used to congregate and then it used to disperse. It would be like a hub and spoke kind of a thing, all this drug that used to emanate from Afghanistan. But now, India itself has become a huge market in the last few years and heroin consumption has also gone up. Alokji, you're saying something?
I said I couldn't get your question fully, but I understand your apprehension is about uninhabited islands in the Indian Ocean which could be used as transit points.
No, they were hubs earlier, but now India has become a market. I was coming to that point that earlier from these islands becoming a hub, it's now the Indian mainland has become a huge market, and this is estimated somewhere upwards of 80,000 crore. That's the amount of drugs doing the rounds, especially largely heroin. Charas and ganja is another aspect.
I'm sorry, I have lost the communication for some time.
Can you hear me now?
Hello.
Can you hear me now, Alok Bansalji?
Anand, I seem to have missed your question.
Yeah, I'm saying India was earlier used as a hub in the sense, the islands on the Indian Ocean off the Indian coast. But now it seems to be that India has become a main market. So what they're doing is they're using money by selling drugs in India to try and go ahead and perpetrate a proxy war on India.
That is quite feasible, but what is even more important is I think now their intended target is India. So this drug is being sent to maybe some of their outfits which would use this to finance their activities. I don't know whether they want to sell it in the market or want to distribute it to their so-called affiliates who will then generate money out using this. They want to give them as a sort of funding because selling it centrally may be a more difficult process. So I thought probably this consignment was headed for Delhi, where they must be having certain agents who would distribute it to various affiliates which are affiliated with ISI. And then these affiliates, as and when they require funds, would keep, because as you know, pure heroin is hardly sold. It is actually adulterated with various things in the